So our anchor text for today is in Mark chapter 1. And I know pastors aren't probably supposed to play favorites with biblical texts. But if you force me and you ask me what my favorite gospel is, I will probably say I have to choose the Gospel of Mark, simply because Mark reads literally like a 1990s Sylvester Stallone action movie that has no time for character development or plot setup. Like, that's the Gospel of Mark. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, maybe you're not too familiar with the Bible and you're still trying to figure out this whole church thing. The first four books in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, I often refer to as the Gospels. And even though they all tell the story of the same person, they all tell on the story of Jesus, they all tell that story with a little bit of a unique flavor. Right? And maybe it's just me, but I just think it's humorous that when you read the Gospels, the writer of Matthew and the writer of Luke, and to a smaller extent, the writer of John, basically all start the same way. They all start with the origin story of Jesus, right? They all start with some version of like, here's baby Jesus in a manger, and he's just sitting there, and here's some shepherds out in the field on a silent night. It's a quiet night. They all kind of start with some kind of origin story, but then you read the Gospel of Mark, and Mark literally opens his gospel in the first chapter with, you want to see Jesus cast out some demons and heal some people and then cast out more demons? I mean, that's the Gospel of Mark. I couldn't make this up even if I tried. In the very first chapter, Jesus is casting out demons. And I'm just like, if you've never read the Bible before, you're like, whoa, bro, can you just slow down for just a second? I don't even know who the characters are. And John Mark, the writer, is like, I don't care about character development. We're about to cast out some demons. And I know I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it. The Bible's only boring if you don't read it. Amen? Like, it's not boring, I promise you. And I know some of you in here, that's hard because, maybe you've got like ADD and you get distracted easily and you're like, Sammy, I've tried, I just can't. If that is you, can I just, real quick, this is not even the sermon. Can I just prescribe to you the Gospel of Mark? Okay, if you got ADD, you got to read the Gospel of Mark, because this thing reads like the writer was on his 12th can of Monster Energy drink when he is writing it. And I wish we could do this. We can't do this because we don't have all the time, but I wish I could read you like the entire, all 16 chapters. But if you go home and you read it, you'll notice that not only does the writer completely skip the origin story of Jesus, but you'll notice that it is a fast-paced, action-packed letter. And one of the things that we notice in the Gospel of Mark is the writer uses words like immediately and right away a lot. And I didn't do a lot of research into all the other translations, but in the ESV alone, the writer uses the word immediately 35 times in 16 chapters. Right, that's how high-strung this guy was when he's writing the gospel. And I just think that's so important for our text today, because I don't want you to miss the sense of urgency in which the writer is telling the story of Jesus when he tells us just one chapter into his book, or letter, if you will, that Jesus was walking down the Sea of Galilee. So Mark chapter 1, verse 16, that's where we're going to kick it off. And I want you to see if you can sense how the sense of urgency that he's writing with in here. Okay, so Mark chapter 1, verse 16. Again, not a whole lot of character development, not a whole lot of plot development. He's like, can we just get to it? And I'm like, okay, my man, I like your style. Listen to what he says. It says in Mark chapter 1, verse 16. It says, as Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he says he saw Simon and his brother Andrew. And the writer says that they were casting a net. Just real quick, that's that same word again. Did anybody catch that? Like, that's 3 weeks in a row now in a different passage that Jesus did what? What did Jesus do? He saw, right? We talked about the last couple of weeks. So he's walking, and guess what? Once again, he sees them. And he saw Simon and his brother, and he says that they were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. If you have a pen, I want you to underline they were fishermen. I'll tell you why that's important a little bit. But I want you to listen to this invitation. It says, then Jesus said to them, he says, come and follow me, Jesus said to them, and I will send you out to fish for people. Another translation says that I will make you fishers of men. And then it says this in verse 18. This is wild. It says, at once they left their nets and they followed him. I'm not gonna like re-preach the sermon because I did last week, so if you missed it, go listen to it on the YouTubes. But in case you haven't had a chance to catch up yet in the last couple weeks, and you're sitting in the room going, okay, I think I'm following what's happening here. Jesus walked up to a bunch of strangers while they were working their, third shift job or whatever it is, and he's like, I want you to follow me, and they left everything to follow me. If you're wondering why in the world they did that, the simple answer is this. The reason that these guys were so quick to leave everything to follow Jesus is the same reason why I know that if Taylor Swift walked in the room right now and walked to my friend Ava and was like, hey, you want to come with me? She would get up in the middle of this sermon and leave, no questions asked. Is that a fair statement to say? Like, you're just like, I am out of here. Don't lie now, you're in church. She's like, I don't know, I don't want to hurt your feelings, right? And maybe you're not, maybe some of you are not a Taylor fan. Maybe you're a sports fan. Maybe it's Tom Brady or Tiger Woods or whatever it is, right? Some of you guys in here, you love to golf. Where my golfers at in here? Like, you're like, I love, there they are, right? I mean, if Tiger walked in here and was like, hey, man, Luke, you want to go hang? I'm guessing you'd look at her and like, find the ride home. You're like, it's not that I don't like you, but hopefully you have plans for the rest of the afternoon because I'm out of here, right? And the point is, there are certain invitations that are worth leaving everything for. And some of you got great plans today, but I'm telling you right now, there are people in your life that you've thought of that if they walked in the room right now with an invitation, you would be like, peace out. You would cancel everything because some invitations are worth leaving everything for, just like this one. Jesus walked up to these guys. Again, if you're still like, I can't even comprehend that, we'll talk about that. We talked about that in the last couple of weeks. But Jesus walked up to him and he tells him, he's like, I want you to come with me. We're going to fish for people. And then it says again in verse 18 right there, it says, at once they left their nets and followed them. Question, why do you guys think the writer felt the need to let us know that they left their nets? Anybody? It's not a rhetorical question, right? It's not a trick question either, right? Well, they weren't going to take them with them. That's a good image. Can you imagine, like, can we bring our nets with us, right? Why'd they leave their nets? What'd you say? Okay, yeah, but why did they leave it, though? What? It's important. What'd you say? They left their old life, right? And so the idea here is that the writer is trying to let us know that when Jesus came and invited these guys to follow him, it wasn't just like this thing like, yeah, I'm with you. We'll meet up a little bit later. No, he wants us to see that it cost them something. And I've talked about this the last couple of weeks, and if you weren't here, maybe you want to write this down. But the idea is that we cannot follow Jesus without leaving something or someone behind. Right? And we can try all we want. But I'm just telling you right now, that if you're serious about following Jesus, it's impossible to do that without leaving something or someone behind. And I tried my whole life to bring a lot of things with me because, again, if you grew up in church, I thought it was just about getting your passport stamped. Like if people came up and they're like, do you believe in Jesus? I'm like, yeah, sure. And that Just As I Am was playing in the background and it just moved my soul. And I'm like, yeah. And I came up to the altar and I did the thing. And I'm like, okay, now I'm going to go back to my old life. But it's so fascinating when you read the Gospels that very rarely does Jesus go around to people and go, hey, man, do you want to pray a prayer and believe in me? No. Jesus went to people and he said, hey, I want you to follow me. And what was implicit in that was that you're going to have to leave something behind. It is impossible to follow Jesus without leaving something or someone behind. And we've talked about this in the last couple weeks, generally speaking. But if you guys don't mind, I want to spend really the rest of my time this morning talking about two specific things that we're going to have to leave behind if we want to follow Jesus. Okay, and this is obviously not an exhaustive list, but based on this text, I think that there are at least two things that those of us who are considering following Jesus or those of us who are already following Jesus are going to have to reckon with, and we're going to have to decide, am I willing to leave this for Jesus? The first thing that we're going to probably have to leave behind when we follow Jesus is our plans. I just thought I'd give a couple seconds for some of you to catch your breath. Right, if you want to follow Jesus, hate to be the bearer of bad news, but there's a real chance that you're going to have to leave behind your plans. And I don't know what you guys, I don't know what comes to your mind when you hear plans or what your plans are, but I was thinking about this the other day, and the first thing that came into my mind was I've been into Lego lately. I talked about this during our Rest series. I don't know if you guys remember, but I brought that little Jeep Lego, on stage, and it was like 150 pieces because I had never done Lego before, and I wanted to try it and kind of see if I was going to like it, and I loved it, and so I went from 150 or so pieces to like 3,000-4,000 pieces, and Lego is expensive, by the way. Nobody told me that. that. People are like, yeah, Lego's fun. No, Lego is expensive. I'm like, this is a budget item. Like, this is, and so here's what I did. This is a bad idea. You know, people told me not to do this. I asked all my friends who do Lego. They're like, it's a bad idea. But I went on Facebook Marketplace, right? You know, and that's how you know it's already a bad idea. And I bought a Lego that someone had already put together. And then I took it home and I took it all apart. And then now I'm going to put it back together, right? Does that sound like a nightmare to anybody? Like, that's the worst thing ever. Can I show you a picture? This is what it looks like right now in my basement. I'm trying to put that Lamborghini together. Anybody here, their brain hurts just looking at all those pieces, right? I mean, it took me hours like this. And I'm like, so there's no bags, there's nothing. I just kind of basically sort all the pieces together. And then the Lego piece is in this office, this little office that I have in my basement. And it's on that table. And I laid it all out. And I make sure the doors close. And I took one of my kids' doll houses and I put it in front of the door. And I put a giant sign that says, do not enter. Like, seriously, like my kids know. They're like, they cannot step into that room. And it's really cute because when I started doing this, Eden came up to me and my sixth grader, and she's like, oh, Daddy, like, you know, the Lego, that's fun. Can we do it together? That could be something we do together. And I was like, oh, man. I didn't want to tell her no because it was so cute. I was like, let me pray about it. Okay, I'll get back and see what the Lord wants us to do. I was like, can I buy you another one? She's like, I just want to do it with you. I'm like, I don't want to do it with you, you know? This is a true story. I'm like, oh, I don't know. Because here's the deal. If you've done Lego like this before, you know, right? Like I can't lose a piece, right? I lose like one tiny little piece, it's over, okay? And I just have this nightmare that my kids are going to come in the room and they're going to start playing with the pieces, and then it's just going to be a disaster. And so I'm like, do not come in the room. Do not help me. I have a plan. I have a book. I have the pieces. It's sorted out, and just give me time, and I'm going to put this thing together. You can take it off the screen now because some people are crying. I can tell. They're like, I cannot keep looking at that mess. But I think the truth for a lot of us is that's how we think of our lives, right? I think if most of us in here are just like, you know, I know we're in church and we got to like, you know, act that, but come on, let's be honest. I think if most of us are honest, we think in our minds that we have, or at least if we had all of the pieces that we think we need, we can put a great life together. Anybody with me? You're like, if God would just do blank, 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 and blank, and he did this and this and he did that, my life would be great. Like in our mind, we have this picture. It's like that book. It's like, I just know what a good life is, and I have a plan. And maybe I have all the pieces, or maybe I don't have all the pieces. Maybe I need God to give me some pieces, but I have a plan, and I'm just hoping that nothing interferes with my plan. Right? I think a lot of us go into life just thinking that we have this, we know the scenarios, we know the best case, and we know what needs to happen for our life to be whatever we want our life to be, the best version of it. And I've just come here to just remind someone today that one of the things that is so challenging, and if I could say annoying about following Jesus, is Jesus has this knack for ruining your plans. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Like it's like you're sitting there and you got all the pieces and you're just like, if I could just get just that little piece, and if I could just get that, and I'm building towards something, and Jesus comes and he's like, can I just put my hand on the table and smash everything? Right? And for a lot of us, it's like, what in the world? Right? That's one of our greatest fears is that we have this idea, and maybe you don't have that life yet, but we all have this idea of what an ideal life is like. And we're scared that God will mess that up. And if that's you today, I want you to know, for what it's worth, if it makes you feel better, that I imagine that these guy and his brother, when they were by the sea, they probably felt a certain kind of way when Jesus came and ruined their plans. I want you to go back again to the text. Listen to what happens. I don't know if you caught it, but listen to what it says in verse 16. It says, as Jesus walked by the sea, he saw Simon and his brother Andrew. And what were they doing? They were casting. So don't miss this. They were what? Casting. Like they were in the midst of the thing. So Jesus didn't go to Simon and his brother Andrew, you know, when they were taking a smoke break on their lunch hour. Right? He didn't go to them after they clocked out for the day. These guys were literally casting the net. They were in the middle of their job doing the thing that they were supposed to be doing. And Jesus like, hey guys. And they're like, dude, man, we're casting, like we're doing the fisherman thing. And like, hey, Simon, Andrew, hey. You guys want to follow me? You guys want to come? I'm going to send you out to fish for people. And again, let's go back to how they respond. It says at once, they did what? They left their what? Nets. Like he made the invitation. They just leave their nets. Okay, and this is not like you leaving your keys or your phone somewhere. That's not what this is. All right, the other day, I left my phone at home. I was going to work. I just forgot it, and I was halfway down the street when I realized I didn't have my phone. And I hope none of my neighbors saw me doing this. You guys know that thing we do when we lose our phone? Do we freak out? Does anybody else do this? Like I slammed on my brake, and I stopped patting myself down, like trying to find my phone. Anybody else do that? Right? It doesn't even make sense. It's not like I put my phone in my socks, but I'm like patting, like, where is it? Because God forbid that I go anywhere without my phone. And I just need us to understand that when the writer says that they left their nets, this is not the same as you leaving your phone or your keys. Okay, leaving their nets in the first century represented that they were literally leaving the very thing that symbolized their life plan. Okay, and I did a little bit of research on this week. I probably spent way too much time reading about fishing and fishermen in the first century. But did you know that there are actually a lot of historians and theologians that believe that Simon wasn't actually just this poor fisherman that a lot of us think he is? A lot of people actually believe that because they owned the boat and because they tell us that he had a house and they had hired men, that this was actually a successful enterprise. Right? Did you know that a lot of people actually believe that what these brothers was doing is that they were a part of actually a successful family enterprise and business? One writer put this way. It says that when they left their nets, they were leaving their best chance at livelihood in the first century. So just think about that. When it says they left their nets, they were leaving what, according to their estimation, up to that point in their life, was literally their best chance at livelihood. And here's the really annoying part. Jesus knew that. Isn't that crazy? Jesus knew that by calling them while they were casting their nets, they were going to have to leave the very thing that was their best chance of livelihood. Jesus knew that he was asking them to leave what was most likely, a lot of historians believe, was a generational family business that had been in the making for decades. So these guys' dad, fishermen. Grandpa, fisherman. Great-grandpa, most likely a fisherman. And Jesus knew all of that, and he still walked up, and he's like, hey, I want you to leave all of that and follow me. And for many of us, that is our greatest fear. Our greatest fear is that we've got this plan for our lives. And if we really sell out for this Jesus thing, he's going to walk in and say, hey, I actually want you to give that up. And if you're in the room or watching online and you're like, yeah, that is a fear of mine, that God's going to be like, your plan's not. I wish I could tell you that's not the case. But I can't. Because everything I read in the scripture shows me a God who, at the very minimum, is going to interrupt your plans. And if you're real lucky, he's like, I'm going to completely wreck your plans. Like Jesus loves the idea of coming in and saying, I'm glad you got all the Lego pieces in there, but I'm going to completely wreck your plans. And that is the bad news, if you will, but don't worry, I got good news. Anybody in the mood for some good news this morning? Anybody? Okay, thank you. This side of the room, right? You guys are like, I don't know. I'm just going to talk to you guys, I guess. Those guys don't care about it. Don't worry. Next week, I'll come with a lot of bad news. You guys will be really happy, all right? But all I got is good news. Here's the good news. Anytime we give Jesus our best plans for us, he always replaces it with his best plans for us. Right? Everybody in here, come on now, if I give you a pen and paper or if I give you a mic, like you have an idea of what you think is the best plan for your life. You're like, if we can go here and live here and have that job, and if I can get this. And like we all have this kind of crafted image of the life that we're trying to build, and we have convinced ourselves that that is the best version of the life that we could ever have. And Jesus is saying, hey, if you give me that, I know you got a best plan crafted in your mind, but if you give me your best plan, I'm going to replace it with my best plan for you. And how many of you know that those two things aren't always the same? Right? Anybody walk with Jesus enough to know that whatever version that you think is your best plan for you isn't always the same version of what God thinks is God's best plan for you? And so the question is, are we willing, just like these brothers were, to trade in what we've convinced ourselves is our best plan for ourselves for what God thinks is actually our best plan for us? And I know there's a bit of church talk semantics here. And so here's what I want to do real quick before we go back to the text. I just want to give you guys a litmus test to know if the plan that you're living is your best plan for your life or God's best plan for our lives. Right? Because it's so easy, isn't it, to talk ourselves into it's like, God's got, Like, it's so easy to convince ourselves that the lives that we've chosen, the narrative that we're living in, is actually God's best plan for us. But a lot of times, it's just our plan with Jesus just kind of blessing it a little bit. And so I want to kind of give you maybe 3 indicators, if you will. And so if you're like, how do I know if the plan that I'm embracing for my life is my best version of that plan or if God's version of that plan? I want to give you kind of 3 litmus tests. Is this making sense to you guys? Are you guys tracking with me? Okay, so how do you know if the narrative that you've embraced for your life is your best version of your plan or if it's God's best version of his plan for your life? I want to give you just 3 real quick, and I'm going to tie it all back to the text, I promise you. Here's kind of the first way that you know. We can write this down or take a picture on the screen. Our best plans usually only benefit us and ours. But God's best plans always benefit others and theirs just as much as it benefits us and theirs. You guys get that? If you want to know, like, man, I got this plan for my life. Is this really just my version? Is it God's version? I know it's a little bit wordy, but I think one of the ways we know is because a lot of times when we look at our plan, it usually almost always only benefit us and ours. But when God steps in and he gives us his plans, it almost always benefits others just as much. And I'll be honest with you guys, I kind of changed the phrasing of that. I was going to say it benefits others and theirs more than it benefits us and ours, but I figured that would scare some of you guys, so I figured I would stick with just as much. Because the point's the same, which is if you want to know if the direction you're heading is towards Jesus, one of the greatest indicators of that is that the plan for your life benefits other people just as much, if not more, than it benefits you. Here's how Jesus put it in Mark 10:45, I believe. We don't have it on the screen, but here's how Jesus put it. Jesus said this. He said this. He says, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. Now think about this. This is Jesus, spoke the universe into existence. The beginning and the end, could do anything, knows all things. And he came in and he's like, hey, I don't know why you guys think I came, but I just need to let you know that I didn't come to be served. I came to what? To serve. If I'm Jesus, I'm walking in like, dude, you're here to serve me. I made you. I know you. You're all a bunch of screw-ups, okay? I'm the only one that has it together here, so why don't you guys get to serving me? But Jesus rolled in, and Jesus said, hey, I didn't come to be served. I came to serve you. And this is such a wild thought to think that when God sent his son into the world, God's plan for his son, God's best plan for his son was going to benefit a whole lot more people than it did his son. And so if you want to know if the road you're walking is your best version or God's best version, you just need to ask yourself, is my plan just benefiting me and my friends and my family and my kids, or does it benefit others? My wife and I a week ago went on a date to Jay's because we love Jay's. That's where we always go. They got great ribs, by the way. Anybody ever had the ribs at J. Alexander's? It's amazing. Yeah, thank you, Tony. He's had it. It's really good. Have it the next time you go there. Okay, tell him Sammy sent you, all right? Not that I'm a sponsor or anything, or they're a sponsor, but that would be cool. If anybody at Jay's is watching, I would love to sponsor you guys. How funny would that be? Like, this sermon brought to you by J. Alexander's. On checkout, jays.com/Pastor Sammy for 10% off your next order. That'd be great, you know. I'll gladly wear a shirt that says Jay's every Sunday up on here if they give me those free ribs and that carrot cake, you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, so we're at J. Alexander's and we're eating and we've done this for years, all right? And so my wife, pulls out a paper and a pen And I'm like, man, it's been a minute. I'm like, let's just dream for a little bit. Let's just kind of, where do we feel like God's leading us? Let's just dream. And so we start dreaming. And I don't know if it occurred to you, babe, but I realized when we were leaving, I was like, man, it's just so crazy how different my dreams are the more I walk with Jesus. Like when I first met Jesus in my 20s, man, my dream was all about me and my family and like, let's do this thing and go to that place. And how amazing would that be if this thing happened to us? And I just feel like the more I walk with Jesus, and I'm just looking at our dreams, and I'm like, a lot of this has nothing to do with us. Right? Like if this works, a lot more people are going to be happier than us. And I'm not trying to make us like the whatever. I'm just telling you that as you walk with Jesus, one of the ways that you know that you're following Jesus is that your plans for your life benefit a lot of other people more than just your people. When Jesus walked up to the disciples, he says, I'm going to make you what? Who's going to benefit the most from that? The people. Us. Right? I mean, yeah, they got to be a part of it, but his plan for them was far beyond them. He's saying, you're going to play a part in my story, and when you play that part, it's going to help a whole lot more people than it's going to help you. We tracking? You all with me? It's like the point under the point, right? And so, again, how do we discern it's our plan or God's plan? This is all in the text, and here's the second one. I'm going to fly through this. The second one is our best plans usually work when we work, but God's best plans usually only work when God works. In other words, if all you got to do to accomplish your plan for your life is try harder, then there's a good chance that it's your plan for your life. Because I'm telling you right now, when you're following Jesus into his best plans for you, you still work hard because you're a good steward, but there's going to come a moment in time where you're going to throw your hands up in the air and go, I cannot do what you're asking me to do no matter how hard I try. Jesus says, I'm going to make you fishers of men. Do you think Andrew was like, oh, yeah, I know how to do that? That's great. It's just like fishing for fish. It's pretty easy, you know. Like, we can do that, you know, got it. Thanks for letting us know. Now let us go do the thing. Right? If you're following God, you know you're in his plan because it's not just you working. You know you're in his plan because there comes a moment of surrender and desperation where you throw your hands up and go, I cannot do this no matter how hard I try unless you come through. I can't. Okay, I can't be the father of many nations because I'm 100 years old no matter how hard I try. I'm going to need you. I can't go to the Pharaoh and tell him to let your people go. That's not going to work no matter how hard I try. I need you. I can't beat this giant no matter how, because I'm a boy. I'm a shepherd boy. Everyone's laughing at me. I can't beat the giant no matter how hard I try unless you help me. Esther's like, I can't convince the king to set an entire people free unless you help me. Daniel's going, I can't shut the mouth of lions no matter how hard I try unless you help me. And so how do you know if the plan that you're crafting for your life is your best version of your plan or if it's God's best version of his plan for you? It's a simple question. How much does your plan require you to trust God? How much of it is like, man, I can't, just give me time, give me enough money, give me enough resources, I can pull this up by myself. And how much of it is like, man, I know I got to play a part, but man, if the Lord does not come through, there is no way this is going to work. When Jesus walked up to them and said, hey, I'm going to make you fishers of men, they weren't going, got it, easy, and check that box. Just give me a couple years. I got a plan. If you know the story, they failed over and over and over and over again. Until the Holy Spirit came and empowered them to do what they couldn't do on their own. And so God's best plan for us, it always benefits other people more than it benefits us. We need God to work for it to work. And here's the last one. Our best plans are usually short-term in scope. But God's best plan for us are always long-term. Room this size, I'm going to guess that even though we all probably have different dreams and different versions of what we want our life to look like, I think the one thing that probably every one of our plans in this room has in common is that they're usually short term. And by short term, I don't mean like 1 year or 3 year or 5 year plan. Some of you are overachievers. Like, I got a 10-year plan. Congratulations. Nobody likes you, all right? I'm just kidding. We like you. We need you. I'm just kidding. That's it. All right, that's not what I'm talking about. No, when I say short term, I mean, have you noticed that all of our plans usually only go as far as our lifespan? And I looked it up this week, and according to the CDC, the average lifespan of an American is 76.4 years old. And they say that's the lowest it's been in like 2 decades. That's a different conversation for a different day. But I think for a lot of us, if we're honest, we're just hoping that God will give us 60, 70, 80, maybe 90-something years on earth if we're lucky. And we're just trying to pack that in. It's like, man, I just hope it goes well, man. We have all these plans, and we're just trying to, and I know that 60, 70, 80, 90 years seems like a lot. And it is a lot until you put those 60, 70, 80, 90 years in the scope of eternity. 80 years on earth sounds like a lot until you look at it in perspective of eternity past to a never-ending eternity future. All of a sudden, 80 years doesn't seem like a lot. And I know that the last thing, some of us like to think of is our lives in the scope of God's eternity and eternal perspective, because it makes us feel so small. But I wonder if that's the motivation that some of us in the room need this morning to finally be able to say to God, I'm going to exchange my best plan for my life for your best plan for my life, because your best plan for my life is always long term. Because your best plan for my life extends beyond the scope of what I could plan. Right? Because I know that you're not just thinking of what's going to happen right now in my life, but you are thinking beyond all of that. It's 2,000 years since Jesus made this invitation. Just think about this. Jesus was walking by the Sea of Galilee, and he made this invitation. And here we are in Toledo, Ohio in 2023, and we're telling the story of 2 fishermen. You know why? Because God's plan for them was long term. Here's how I put it. We did a young adult thing last month. Do you guys know that we're doing a young adult thing, by the way? Does everybody know that? Okay, where are my young adults at? They're here somewhere. You got, all right, that was so weak. That was so disappointing. You're all supposed to be the loud, crazy ones. But we launched a young adult thing, 18 to 30-year-old. If you're a young adult, once a month we get together for Bible study. It's a lot of fun. And actually this Tuesday we're doing the next one. I'm going to be teaching downtown. It's a lot of fun. So stop by the table out there, talk to any of these crazy people. Where are you at? Young adults, where are you at? Yeah, okay, yeah, thanks. So disappointed. I know what I'm preaching about this Tuesday, okay? We need to raise the passion and the energy. But we had our first young adult kind of gathering. We had food, and we just looked through the Bible. And here's how I put it to all the young adults. I said, I've been where you are. I said, my guess is that for a lot of you in here that you're thinking about the work that God is doing in your life, and you're thinking like, man, where does God want me to live, and what should my major be, and what job should I take, and what city am I supposed to go in? Am I going to marry someone? Are we going to have kids? And you're just hoping that God's work in your life is just kind of played out in those ways. And I told them, and I said, I know this is so hard to comprehend, but I need you to understand that even though you're thinking of God's work in your life in terms of who you're going to marry in 10 years and 15 years and 30 years, that God right now is working in your life, and he is thinking generations from now. Like the work that God is doing, he's not just looking at 5, 10, 20-year window. God's saying, I want to do something in your life that's so much more long-term than that. Like I want to do something that's going to affect generations from now. And that sounds so crazy, but I saw this so clearly this summer. My wife and I took our kids to go see my mom in Phoenix. And one of the days we sat down and my kids were playing, and my mom, we're just asking her stories of what it was like to grow up. And my mom is telling my brother and my sister and I these stories of when she was like 8 years old in a village in the middle of nowhere in Nigeria, and how she had to, it's like 4 a.m. before she'd go to school, and she had to kind of walk in the dark to go to the market to sell something, barefoot, just running because she was scared. And then she would run back and get dressed and go to school. And I'm just listening to this story, and I'm just like this is my mom. Like in a village, a random remote village in the middle of nowhere, running around at 5 in the morning barefoot, trying to figure out, man, what I got to do before I can get to school. And as my mom is telling this story, I am watching my children swim in a pool. And I just got so overwhelmed. I just said, man, I am so thankful that we serve a God that while my mom was walking at 10, he was working a plan for my children. Isn't that crazy? That we serve a God that my mom was just doing her thing and nobody would have picked my mom. Nobody would have looked at her and go, oh man, God's got something going on for you. And I don't know what my mom was praying when she was 8, 9, or 10, but all I know is that there was a God in heaven who is going, hey, I have a plan, and my plan for you is not just for your life. I am thinking generations from now. I'm going to do a work in you that your children's children are going to be in a place where they are set up to make an impact for my kingdom. I'm telling you right now, I don't know what plan you've got for your life. I know a lot of us have convinced ourselves that it is good, but God is inviting you to trade your plan for his plan, and his plan is not only long-term, but his plan is going to echo for all eternity. So you can keep your little plan, and it's over in 80, 90 years, or God's saying you can come be a part of my plan. And my plan echoes for eternity. And you're not the main character in my story, but you get to play a part. And so Jesus walked up to these guys. Watch the invitation again in verse 17. We see all three of these things in there. He says, I want you to come. I want you to follow me. And I'm going to send you out to fish for people. That's a plan that doesn't just benefit them. It benefits the world. You and I are here right now in part because they said yes to that plan. That was a plan that required them to trust God. And that was a plan that was so much more long-term than anything they could ever dreamed for themselves. So what do we got to leave behind when Jesus comes? What's the first thing we got to leave behind? We got to be able to leave our plans behind. But the good news is, like I said, when we give God our plans, our best, he replaces it with his best for us. And can we all just agree that his best is better than ours, if it doesn't feel like it? Here's the second thing that we got to leave behind if we follow God. The second thing that we've got to leave behind, and this one is, for some of us, a lot harder than the first one, is we got to leave behind our people. We got to leave our people behind. This is one that, man, I've been in church my whole life. I don't know if I've heard people talk about more than 1 or 2 times. I want you to read the rest of the passage with me in verse 19. So after Jesus called Simon and his brother, and they left their nets, listen to what happens again in 19. Remember, again, that the writer is writing with such a sense of urgency, and he says this. He says, when they had gone a little bit farther, he said that Jesus, again, here's our word again. What did he do? He saw James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John in a boat. And these guys weren't casting their nets. These guys were preparing their nets. And it says, without delay, he called out to them. And then listen to this. It says, they left their father, Zebedee, in the boat with the hired men. And what did they do? They followed him. I'm going to read that again. It says, they left their father in the boat. And they what? They followed Jesus. I know I'm probably reading into the text a little bit here, but I was thinking about just this verse, and I just kept looking at it over and over again. And I just thought to myself, okay, I know it doesn't really say this, and this is a little bit of speculation, but I think it's kind of cool that there's no documented resistance from their father, right? It's kind of cool. Right, where are my parents at? Parents, quick show of hands if you're a parent in the room, keep it up. I just need you to know I've been praying for you this week. And before you say, yeah, you may want to hear what I've been praying for before you're like, I'll take it. You may not like the prayer. But I've been praying for all the parents in our church this week. I don't know why this gets me emotional, but I've been praying that God would give us the grace to be the kind of parents that let our kids leave us in the boat And maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I just think it's so interesting that when Jesus called them and they were going to leave, the writer doesn't say anything about how their father was like, no, you can't leave. Okay, I don't know where he's taking you. Can he give us a plan? Can he check in? Can you finish this shift? We had a plan. We've been working this for generations. My great-grandfather was a fisherman. What do you mean you're going to leave the nets and follow Jesus? No, the writer just says they just left their father in the boat. And I've been praying all week for the parents in the room. I've been praying for myself because I love my kids just as much as you guys love your kids. And I'm just praying, God, will you please make me the kind of father that I am okay when my kids leave me in the boat? Because guess what? If we're truly raising our children to follow Jesus, there may very well come a moment in time where God's going to call your kids to do something or go to a place, and it's not going to be safe, and it's not going to be risky, and it's not going to be by the book, and it's not going to be according to plan. And we're going to have one or two choices. We're either going to let them leave us in the boat, or we're going to hold them back. Okay, and if this helps you, I was a college young adult pastor for a long time, and I've been on the other side of so many of these conversations. I can't tell you how many young adults I've sat down with coffee over, and I'm just like, man, it is clear where God is leading you. You know where God's leading you, man. If you weren't afraid, you know what God is asking you to do, and they're like, I know what God's asking me to do, but I don't know that I can do it because my parents. And I'm just telling you right now, parents, I know it's hard because I'm a parent. I get it. But this is my experience. I don't have any data to prove this up. But if you hold your kids back, they will resent you for it. They'll resent you for it eventually. And I just pray this week that we would be, those of us who are parents in the room, the kind of parents who are just like, man, this scares me to death, and I don't know what we're going to do, and I'm going to do the Find My iPhone thing. Better believe I'm going to be tracking you everywhere you go with Jesus, just so I know, just for my peace of mind. But that we would be the kind of parents that's like, go, follow him. This is the greatest invitation in the world, and I don't know how it's going to turn out, and it may not work out according to our plan, but go. Imagine that. Imagine if our kids knew that when the time came, they could leave us in the boat. Again, a little bit of speculation, I don't know, but I just think it's interesting that there's no resistance in this narrative. Now, having said all of that, I can speculate all I want about how the father didn't, resist or whatever, and I don't know for sure. But here's the one thing we do know for sure, though, is that these cats were going to leave regardless of what their father said. Right? Message paraphrase, I love it. It's not on the screen. But it says this in the message. It says, Jesus made them the same offer. Immediately, they left their father, the boat, and the hired hands, and they followed him. They didn't ask any questions. They weren't like, Dad, what do you think? You think this is a good idea? Do you want to vet this guy for us? You want to look at his resume? Do you want to make sure? It says they just left. And I wonder who needs to hear that today. Maybe you're a young adult. Maybe you're a grown man or a grown woman. But I wonder who needs to hear that today. How many of you in the room today that God has been calling you to a life, and he's been calling you to a place, and he's been calling you to a decision, and you've been holding back because there are people in the boat with you, and you're waiting for their approval, and you're waiting for their permission, and you're waiting for them to be on board. And God loves you enough to send me to let you know this morning that it's time. It is time to leave them in the boat. It is time to follow Jesus. It may very well be the most painful thing that you do, but I promise you that you will never regret it. And I know that not just because the scripture says it. Man, I've walked it, and some of you, a lot of you know this because I've shared this many times. When I moved here 20-something years ago, I came with a plan. I was going to go to pharmacy school and do all of this stuff, and the American dream, and God came in and wrecked my plans. But what a lot of people don't know is that when I moved here, I didn't know anybody in this entire state. I knew one person. There was one person, my mom knows, she's watching, that was connected to the first 19 years of my life in Nigeria. It's the one person that I knew. I had an uncle in Cleveland. That was it. That's all I had. And I'll never forget February of 2000, sitting in an office with this person and just telling him, I remember just sitting there going, I know we had a plan. I know I know we had a plan for my life, and I was supposed to, come here for a semester and then move to Phoenix to be with my sister and go to school. I know we had a plan. I'm like, I know this doesn't make any sense, but I just feel like God is asking me to just stay in Toledo, Ohio. I don't even know anybody there, and it's crazy. I just feel like he wants me to stay. And I don't know if you've ever been in a situation before where you are having a conversation with somebody that you love and respect, someone that's maybe a spiritual authority in your life, and you're telling them what you feel like God's leading you to do, and they tell you that you don't have their blessing. I mean, it's been 20-something years, and I still feel that loss in my soul when the one person that was supposed to have my back said to me, man, you are crazy. You do not have my blessing. And if you make this decision, I'm cutting you off. If you're waiting for a bow at the end of the story, there's no bow. That was the last conversation we had. It's the last conversation we had. And I remember hopping on a Greyhound or whatever it was to Toledo. Nothing, nobody. Except I just felt like God said, I have something for you there. And I'm not sharing this story because I need your sympathy. I'm good. I don't regret it. I share this story because I need you guys to hear something that I wish somebody would have told me 20-something years ago. If you're going to follow Jesus, you're going to have to leave some good people behind. If you're serious about following Jesus, at some point, you're going to leave some people behind. And this is a gut punch for some of us because we're so loyal, and I'm with you, and we want to take everybody with us. But I'm telling you right now, not everybody is meant to go with you where God is leading you. And I realized something this week. As I kept reading the scripture, I realized that this wasn't just something that these brothers did when they left their dad in the boat. This is something that you see all through scripture. And when you see it one time, you can't unsee it over and over again. Almost everybody that God used in a significant way in his story had to leave their people. Abraham had to leave his people so that he could be positioned in a place for God to use him. What did Moses do? Moses had to leave and go in the desert. Joseph had to leave his people. David has to lead his people. Daniel had to leave his people. Esther was not with her people. Jesus had to leave his people. And these two brothers knew what a lot of us don't realize is that, man, not everybody's meant to go with us where God is leading us. And so Jesus came by, and Jesus is going, hey, you want to follow me? And they're like, see you later, Dad. I love you, Pops. Tell Mom I'll call her later. But I am out of here. Not because I don't love you, but because I just know that not everybody's meant to go with me where God is leading me. And so if you're serious about following Jesus, you not only are going to have to leave your plans behind, but you're going to have to leave some people in the boat. And so here's my question for you as we close here. Who is in your boat that you may have to leave behind? Who's in your boat? Okay, and again, this is not, let me be clear, it's not bad. It's not necessarily like, I mean, if you got bad people in your boat, that's easy. If you got friends that are pulling you away from Jesus, that's easy. I'm not saying don't love them or don't walk with them, but you don't need to be in a boat with people who are pulling you away from the life God has called you to live. It's like an elevator. It's either going up or it's going down. And so you best decide. If I'm going to go in there, I'm either going down with them or I'm going up. So I'm not talking about that. Sometimes it's just, it's good people. And it's people that it's not that they're even doing anything bad. It's just maybe they're holding you back from what God is calling you to be and who is calling you to be. And at some point, you're going to have to leave. Some of you in here, you're going to have to leave your very anxious mom in the boat. And you're going to have to go, Mom, I love you. I'm always going to be your biggest fan, and you're always going to be my mom. But where I'm going, man, I got to leave you in the boat because you can't even see. You're too worried to see what God is calling me to be a part of. It may be your friends. Man, I love you, man. We're going to kick it. We're going to watch a game together, man. But peace. I got to leave you in the boat. Maybe it's your ex. Bye. Maybe it's your in-laws. Just keep making it awkward and more awkward, right? Come on now. I don't know. You guys with me? Like, I don't know who's in your boat that there's just certain people that I don't know if it's their opinion or what they think, and you're just like, man, and God is saying, I painted the cosmos with stardust, and I'm asking you to follow me. Are you really gonna say no to that because of what people think? Come, Jesus says, and follow me. And the brothers are like, bye, Dad, we're out of here. And we know in hindsight that they did not regret it. I said it last week, I'll say it again. You will never regret anything you surrender to God. Because whatever you give to him, he always replaces it with something better.